There we go.
There we go. Good morning. How are you all doing? This is Pan Dulce. I hope you have your Pan Dulce with you. I have mine from Gussie's Bakery in El Paso, Texas, and I have my cup of coffee. Erika, Isabel, you got something to drink and a Pan Dulce to eat? We are here today to have a discussion between Erika Wurth and Isabel Quintero. Let me tell you a little bit about each one of them, and then we'll get going. Erika Wurth's novel, Crazy Horse's Girlfriend, was published by a colleague of Cinco Puntos Press, Curbside Splendor, in September of 2014. Her collection of poetry, Indian Trains, was published by West End Press, our good friend John Crawford. And Erika teaches creative writing at Western Illinois University. She's Apache, Chickasaw, Cherokee, and was raised outside of Denver. Crazy Horse's Girlfriend. In this, I want to introduce Isabel next. Sorry, doing this one thing at a time. So Isabel Quintero was born and raised in Southern California. She's an elementary school librarian technician and loves sharing her passion for the written word with students. She also teaches community college part-time. So here's these two incredible, wonderful books, and there's been a national movement on here in the United States called We Need Diverse Books. And We Need Diverse Books has been pushing for more authors of color to be writing books, and yet so much of that writing is already occurring out of the small presses in the United States. And we're here this morning to celebrate these writers and to celebrate the work of small presses. So Erika, could you start us out by talking a little bit about your book and giving us a feel for what it's about?
Sure. My cat has decided to join this conversation. Sorry.
Hey,
you can see my cat. Yeah, she hates my computer so much. Well, so you can hear I'm sick, so I'm sorry. Crazy Horse's Girlfriend is essentially about a girl named Marguerite who she complains about how people just do drugs and get pregnant in her small town in Colorado, and then you find out from the first page that she's a drug dealer, and then eventually and so that's essentially the plot. But I think a lot of it for me was that I wanted to write a book from a Native perspective about what I knew, because there's a lot of Native literature out there about the reservation and whether those authors are from one or not. And what was strange for me was that I grew up with people who spoke Lakota or Navajo or Spanish, and they were, Latino and Indian descent, and, they did powwow, they did Native American church, and so they were, people that were Native people, and yet that wasn't getting talked about at all. It was almost like this reservation or nothing thing, which is odd because so many of us live off the reservation, and there's so many reservations where, you have 70% non-Native people living on it. And so I wanted to write about Denver and the outlying areas, the Native communities that I knew. So that was kind of my impetus, and I didn't want a novel where that character had to go back to the res, because, that character, like a lot of Native people that I grew up with, her ancestry passed through Oklahoma, and in Oklahoma there's only one reservation, the Osage Reservation. So even if she were to go to Oklahoma, it would be like, Indian territory. And so I just kind of wanted to break that mold about
That's
this,
a real,
you know what I mean? Like, so.
That's a very interesting point, and actually I think that Isabel might kind of address this as she talks about Gabby, because you're also addressing people who are not, coming up out of Mexico and immigrating as much of the literature about Mexican Americans is. So could you tell us a little bit more about Gabby, Isabel?
Sure. So I wrote about Gabby because similar reasons to Erika, that I was reading a lot of books about Latinos, and it was the same story, not the same story, not that those stories are not important, but it wasn't my story. I was never in a gang or tried to join a gang. My parents were not migrant farm workers, well, at least not here in the United States. I mean, my mom worked in the fields in Mexico when she was a kid, but not here in the United States. And so that story wasn't really my story. I went to an almost all-white high school. Elementary school and junior high, there was mostly Latino kids, but being a light-skinned Latina and being Latina in general, it was always, you were always on the outside even there, this inclusion exclusion thing. So I wanted to write about that. And so that's the story of Gabby, and also looking at it from a perspective of she wants to go to college. It's not, I mean, I didn't write my book with the moral, I don't think so, but the idea that she wants to go to college and she wants to have sex and she wants to do all of these things that are really not talked about in a lot of Latino literature. Young adult, let me rephrase that, young adult literature.
Both of you have very strong women protagonists with very complicated cultural histories, and I notice also that in your characters, when you identify them, Erika in particular, you always identify them by tribe or skin color, as Isabel does as well. So could you address that issue of culture within the context of your books? Erika, why don't you start?
Yeah, I think what a lot of my friends on reservations will talk about is, Indian on Indian hatred, because you have people who are lighter or not enrolled, and so there's this, or don't speak the language, and on a res where, people often do. And there's this punishment, this sort of holding up, I'm more Indian in this way. And it's not that doesn't exist off the res, but I think where I grew up, because there were Navajos and Dakotas and Chippewas occasionally, or Ojibwe or Anishinaabe now, and these Okie mixes like me, and then these people who, they would claim they were part Cherokee, and you were like, I don't know if, the claim was very loose, right? Or you had people who really were Native and didn't know their tribe and didn't want to. So we did identify people that way, just like other Natives anywhere do, on reservations or not, Although I'm sick, and so it's just making my brain just fried. But obviously on reservations, they might be the same tribe unless you're talking about Oklahoma. But so we did do that. I'd be like, oh, what tribe are you? What tribe are you? And if you're off the res, you do that, And so that's why in a small town, right, you get to know what tribe everybody is. And some of that is Native people, try very hard not to marry in any way. It's just part of our cultural traditions. We have family names, clans, bands that we identify as well by, so that we don't marry in any way. So that's some of it. Skin color, I think.
Marry in.
If you say, if I'm Apache but I'm Chiricahua, so if I talk to another Apache who's Chiricahua, we would talk about that's my band, and then we talk about our family names, and potentially we'd be related, and that's a person I could not date. But as far as skin color goes, I think all of us were aware of racism. I think we were aware that in the larger world, if you were darker, you would potentially end up with, with people being racist towards you. And so there was that awareness. But I tried to give color beauty, like yellowy brown or dark brown. I try not to be cheesy, like the chocolate-colored eyes or something like that, but I try to give that beauty, because it's the larger context is racism, but I think there's kind of diversity in beauty and color as well. So.
Okay, that's great. And Isabel, the same thing in Gabby. There's a lot of identifying of people, and this one by body body image, body type of a fat girl or a skinny, slender girl. Is that a big part of what you were trying to get across?
Yeah, it is a big part of what I was trying to get across. Excuse me. I think that, like Erika, for Latinos, and I can only speak about, my Mexican American experience and the experience that I've known, is that because a lot of times we're kind of on the outside, and this goes with skin color as well. We, because of racism, and we do tend to look at, well, you're lighter. I'm always called güerita. That's a compliment. That's a compliment. That's not it's not just, hey, you're light skinned, but it's a compliment as in, well, at least you're not dark or darker.
Right.
There's been many instances where even, hanging out with my husband and doing, running errands for my mother-in-law, where I get compliments for being dark skin. For light skin, I get treated differently than my husband would, who's not, dark. He's some shades darker than I am. But so I just wanted to talk about that, because I think that's a big issue in communities of color, that even though we're very proud of being Latino, being Native, being Black, this issue of, okay, but at least I'm lighter, or at least he's lighter, and lighter is always better. And I think it's something that really needs to be addressed. But as for body type, yeah, I think I've struggled with weight, so that was a very personal thing. Like, I've always struggled with weight and dealing with being thin and fitting that mold, fitting the I'm short, I'm 5'2", fitting the mold of being tall and skinny and trying to look a certain way. And I think a lot of young women have struggled with that, and so I really wanted to address that. Yeah, maybe sometimes it's a health issue, but it really doesn't need to define who we are, and it doesn't need to stop our lives. For a long time, I didn't really want to go to the beach because, I got to put on a bathing suit, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and the expectations of the outside world. And finally, a couple of years ago, I was like, F that. I'm going to go and buy a bathing suit, and I'm going to go to the beach. It's been too long since I've, really enjoyed it. And so it's kind of, owning your body and saying, yeah, this is it. This is it. This is what I have, and dealing with it in that way, so that you can live a more fulfilling life. But I really think it all goes together, being light-skinned, and how we identify ourselves, how we try to make our place in the world, and how we think others see us as how we perceive ourselves. And it's, I don't know if I answered that question, but
you guys are great great answers of questions. I know that you had talked to each other before and had things that you had talked about. I still have lots of things I want to talk about, but I'd like to hear you. Erika, you got a chance to read Gabby, and Isabel, you got a chance to read Crazy Horse's Girlfriend. So are there things that you wanted to talk about to each other?
Yeah, so we talked about...
I was going to respond to the body issue. I was going to talk about the body issue. Uh-oh.
Oh, sure.
Did I lose everyone? Oh, there you are. Oh, good. Yeah, in my character, in Crazy Horse's Girlfriend, who is Latina, I think they're all mean to her because she's overweight, because Native people are messed up and they want to assimilate, but I think that there's also a way in which they look at that Latino character and they're like, oh, I think she just wants a boyfriend, and she's overweight, and so they're mean to her, I feel. And I really struggled with that, because I didn't want it to be some representative of Mexican people, but I felt like I knew girls like that growing up, from different backgrounds, and I just, I felt like people were just so freaking cruel to them. I was significantly overweight until my 20s. I lost 70 pounds, and every once in a while I gained some of it back, and the difference between how people interact with me is really astounding,
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah, no, it is very different, how people interact with you. I get it more even within the own Latino community where we have so many people that are really light skinned, I get it more. And I know now, you know, as I get older, like I didn't realize it before, but there's so much privilege that goes with being light skinned, even if I'm not white. I don't if I identify as white, you know, there's so much stuff that I don't have to put up with that my friends have had to put up with, my family has to put up with. Um, and the weight thing, I think it wasn't, I don't know. It never, I don't feel I ever got, you know, like, oh, maybe somebody said it behind my back, like, oh, that big girl over there, but never, but never to my face, you know. And I think, you know, what Erika was saying, like, oh, I didn't know if I wanted to write, you know, that character because of whatever reason. I think I felt the same way about writing Gabby sometimes. Like, do I want to write, for example, Sebastian? He's gay. He's gay in the book, and I didn't know if I wanted to paint a picture. And he's a little bit effeminate. If I wanted to paint the picture, you know, this is so stereotypical that so many people paint of our homosexual community. If I wanted to paint it that way, but I know people like that, you know, just like Erika was saying, like people like that exist, and to ignore that they exist, and people like that are my friends, you know, so I really wanted to make it real people
Yep.
with real lives and real personalities. But as going back to like some of the things that we had talked about, Eric and I had talked about this issue of of diversity, and we talked about genres. So with We Need Diverse Books, that's I don't know if you want to start talking about that, Erica, what we were talking about, diversity in literature.
Yeah, I think Jessica had mentioned briefly, like, what the frustrating thing, right, is that so many small presses do publish these diverse books, but all they do is look at the mainstream. And so I think we were talking, we went off of that, but I, sorry, my brain really is fried, so I'm on delay.
Well, let me ask one.
So
That's all right. It's clear that that Erika and I both have caught us something early this morning, but I have a question. I agree about the diverse books, but one of the questions I had, which was, do you guys have your books right there near you by any chance?
Each other's books or our own books?
Our own books. If you don't
no,
worry.
I have mine. Okay.
Erika, you have yours?
No.
Okay, all right, not to worry. But in both of your books, you both Gabby and Marguerite have really lousy fathers. Not lousy, but addicted fathers.
Yeah.
And I had identified passages in your books where you wrote about the real confusion. So, and I notice also in both your books there's a lot of men-women issues. So I wonder if you could talk about that, because those things are very distinct to the cultures that you're portraying, especially, you know, the machismo, all that kind of thing is part of your books, and I would like you to talk about that.
Can you repeat the last part, Lee? You kind of cut off.
Oh, okay. There's definitely men-women issues in your books, the way men view women, the way women are treated, the way women present themselves.
Yes.
Culturally. So I'd like you to discuss that within the Indian culture, within the Mexican American community. And that may have to do with the father of your protagonist.
Sure. So growing up, I don't know if it's true for all Latino people, but it is there are expectations. You know, there are expectations of how women should behave and how men should behave, and I think that's in general across the board. All cultures have these roles that are set for them, and so for me, you know, like I've said before, a lot of Gabby is me, and a lot of her is not. But that saying that I kept repeating over and over, ojos abiertos, piernas cerradas. My mom would tell me that all the time.
Can
Um,
you translate it? Translate it for us.
oh, it's eyes open, legs closed.
Yep.
And that was something that my mom would tell me all the time, when I would go out, with friends, even if they were just guy friends. I went to prom with my friend who now, is out, and he's gay. But she told me that phrase with him. And so it was that the expected behavior of how, the expected behavior was always there in the back of my head. So I don't know if it's, I mean, with the hair, you need to behave a certain way. You have to, um, you have to act a certain way in public or in private. You have to do chores. You have to, but your brother doesn't have to. I mean, I sound like a resentful sister, but I have a little brother, and he didn't have to do the same kind of housework I did. And talking with my other, Mexican American friends, it was pretty much the same thing. You're older and you're a woman, and this is your role. This is what you have to do because you need to find a husband. And I think Gabby is really like struggling with that, but thinking like I don't think I want to find a husband right now. I want to go to school. I want to go to school. I don't want to think about all of these things that you, Mom, are trying to have me think about. And so what's interesting is that Gabby's mom is really stressing the importance of behaving and losing weight and being a good girl. But at the same time, she can't control her own life. She has a husband who's addicted, and at one point, later in the book, I don't think it's a spoiler, but Mom gets pregnant. And so I think that's equally as irresponsible as Gabby's best friend getting, having, oh, that's a spoiler, never mind. That's equally as irresponsible as how people view the other girls in,
Right.
their behavior.
So there's a definite role for men and a definite role for women. How about Erika in the Indian culture?
I think a lot of Native women are, sorry, are kind of, and this is a broad generalization because there are some traditional cultures where I think there are certain kinds of expectations, but Native women tend to be a little bossy and strong, and we make fun of our men constantly, and we're just not, there's I think a lot of it is that traditionally, Native women had a lot of rights and power, and I think that now both sexes are kind of squirming under what we're supposed to do now, and we're not interested, but sometimes we don't know how to articulate it. So most Native women I know are kind of tough, and they don't accept those roles. They're a little butchier though. I think like than maybe me. I tend to be kind of a feminine dresser, and they make fun of me for that. But I would say that in my book, a lot of what's going on with the mom is that she has this husband who is at least white. So she thinks, oh, if I marry him and I stay with him, and Native American people marry out more than they marry in. If I marry him and I stay with him, I have this chance of this middle class life, and he keeps ruining it, and he making it totally clear that that's not going to happen. But she just keeps wanting it to happen, and she wants her daughter genuinely to have a middle class life as well. But the home life and the general environment is just too messy for her to be ambitious, and so she ultimately sells drugs because she thinks, I don't care, I just want out of here. And so and I think what happens is because she is just kind of maybe a little bit different, I think that's why she doesn't always end up with men. And so when she finds a guy who's kind of different too, that's why I think she so easily falls for him, because she just thinks, oh, he's different and he understands me, and this is so wonderful, how miraculous. And he's also kind of sarcastic and irreverent, and she likes that. And she's mixed, and he's adopted out, and I think that they kind of identify with one another because of that.
I think that both of your books open doors into communities that young adults generally, thinking of people who don't know much about the Latino community or the Indian community. So I think they're both door openers. And for my last question, because we see that poor Erika is suffering. Erika, I hope you feel better soon. My last question is, how were your books received, and did you think that people got what you were doing? Because they really are incredibly remarkable books, both of them, and very hopeful and joyful. But I'm wondering whether you felt people got what you were doing.
I had Isabel Google my reviews, and she was like, "Oh, it can't be that bad." And then she was like, "Oh my God." When Native people, when they review it, and Isabel found a positive review by a Native reviewer. My friend Natanya reviewed it for Yellow Medicine Review. When Native people review it, they get it, and they're so sweet. You know, they're lifting me up because I think they know, you know, I am saying something important. But when non-Natives review it, I've never seen such anger or fury over a book. I think it's a scary book for some reason. It just really frightens people, and I don't really get that. I think Marguerite is kind of a relatable character. She's very tender and sweet, so it's interesting. She just has a tough mouth.
I think that Debbie Reese was telling me she really thinks your book is incredible, and so when you get Native American people behind it, that's where you want people to get it, but you want other people to get it as well. Isabel, how about you? Do you think people got Gabby?
I think so, but I just wanted to say that I loved Crazy Horse's Girlfriend, and I honestly what Erika was saying was how I felt. Excuse me. I really didn't think, oh, this is. She told me I got some bad reviews, and I was like, for your book, and I Googled it, and I was just astounded because it is such an amazing book, so incredible. Like I just had to keep reading. Like I fell in love with Marguerite, and there were times where I was like wanting to shake her, like, don't do that, don't do what you're about to do. I can't believe you're falling for this stuff. And so I was really surprised, and you know, I love your book. But yeah, I think that Gabby, I think that I feel she's been well received. And I don't know what it is. There have been a lot of people, especially on Twitter, now that I'm Twitter, because somebody emailed me and said, hey, I wanted to talk to you on Twitter, but you're not on there. And I was like, damn it, now I have to get a Twitter account. But now people, I get, you know, I can relate because I'm light-skinned and I've been through the same exact things. And it's been not only, you know, my light-skinned Latinas out there, but also people not of color and people of color that kind of relate, because Gabby isn't only about culture. I mean, yes, that's a big part of her life, but the bigger part is that she's trying to fit in as a woman. Like, what kind of woman am I? And this idea that there are bad women and good women, and that's it. You're either a slut or you're not. And Gabby's trying to reconcile those two ideas of, wait, where do I fit in this? And I think that's true for so many women that, you know, by the end, when I finished writing it, I was like, there is a lot of sex in this book, or talk about sex, and I didn't realize how much that was really in the book and in the character, so much a part of the character. And because that's a little bit taboo even now in 2014, for women to talk about sexuality like that, or even imagine that a young teen girl, you know, who's not even out of high school, would be thinking about sex. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of women, regardless of their cultural background, can relate to. And so I think that's one of the reasons that so many women are like, I get this. I'm a chubby girl, or I'm bigger, and I like to think about sex, and I can relate to her, and this is how I was in high school. So I think that's where people are connecting with her.
Yeah, and that's why I loved Gabby for sure. because Gabby was such a, like, just kind of lovely person who was like, I'm gonna do what I want, and I'm just gonna do it, and I liked her for that.
I think both your protagonists are sharp-tongued, kind of vulgar, kind of in your face, and they both have these really screwed up fathers. So,
Yeah.
but there's so much hope at the end of both books, and I just think they're just incredible books. We're going to close right now, and we want to thank you so much, Erika. I hope you get so much better just instantly. Yeah. Isabel, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything you want to say to close? Because this is a national audience, and we want to.
Well, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to all the supporters out there, everyone who's been so supportive of Gabby. I've really, really appreciated it, especially the librarians. My heart goes out to the librarians because they've really been so supportive. And I wanted to clarify, I was a elementary school librarian for 6 years, but I only teach college now. But, those librarians out there, they have been so incredibly supportive. And so thank you.
We love librarians.
Yes, and
I would definitely. I would just say I just Curbside Splendor, especially Jacob Nab, has gotten behind that book, my book, like so many times, and people like Isabel also have been like, this is a great book. I wanna retweet this and find this and support it this way. And people have been actually very, very kind to me about the book. So I have a lot of people to thank as well.
Yeah, but both of you have done really well with your books. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope your day is good, and I hope you feel better, both of you, and eat up that pan dulce. Thank you to everyone out there.
All right. Thankfully.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
That's a nice catch.